Hi everyone. So our group topic is talk about the concerning New York parking regulations data set. Our group member including Sijia, Songyuan, Matt, Xiaoguang, and M. Chen. So next we're gonna talk about what we find out from this final project. So from the introduction part, I'm gonna introduce our target. Our target of project is to understand how data and our environment interact. For our course of study, we seek to examine how parking data, specifically regulations, relate to the urban environment. Also, how understanding the data that is put into the process could provide for enhanced living conditions in the city. The open source data we have is from the New York City Open Data website. You guys can check out from there. They have a lot of different kind of data you can download. Also, however, the parking regulations are potentially indicators of the freedom of movement and how different neighborhoods could potentially be ripe for city planning. This could tie into different factors. For us, we're focused on the social economic factors and how the city reacts to the equality of this movement. Next is the objectives will affect our project research and analysis. We will try to focus on what is the trait of car that will most likely lead them violating regulations. Question below will concern for different five parts. They're including the frequent violations code, violation precinct, violation body type, and did anyone violate more than one times, and frequent parking violation occur time. The last one would be the most vehicle registration state. So next, our my group teammate gonna talk about and introduce the data source.
Hey guys, I'm Xiaoguang. So it's time for me to tell you about our data. Our data is from New York City Open Data. This is a really good website and you can get almost all kind of various data site about New York City. And it's open to the public, to everyone. Especially, we selected New York parking violations data site in fiscal year 2017. The entire raw data has more than 2 gigabytes, including 1.8 million rows and 43 columns. From this data, we are able to know who, at what time, and which street made what kind of parking violations and other details regarding the vehicles and the violations. We firstly use Cloudera virtual machine and the Hadoop environment, attempting to conduct our research, even though we faced many problems because we're new to the Hadoop. But we still import the high-volume dataset into Hadoop. However, because the virtual machine itself occupied too many resources and makes our data processing rather slow, we finally turned to R language and also uses ArcGIS and Tableau to create charts. After we imported the data, we first delete several columns that not helpful for our data analysis. Something like the codes that only used in the government system and the public can hardly find what it means. And besides, the dataset itself are not clean, like some parts of the values are blank, while some others are not. So we put the average value or ignore the value if it's not a number. Here is a part of our data.
Yeah, the first question that we sought to answer was basically the overall, which was to say, which precincts had the most amount of violations. We found that 36% of violations were focused into the top 10 precincts, and that, in fact, the first precinct, which was also the number one, had the most violations, had 1 in 6 of those. From the top 6 precincts, we were able to take those geographic locations and input them into ArcGIS, where we were able to see basically a map of the precincts and identify the actual locations of the greatest offenders. And we can see that 3 of them are located in Midtown, generally around Central Park. 1 is way on the Upper West Side, pretty much equidistant or equal to Harlem, and then we have 2 in lower Manhattan. Interestingly enough, the first precinct, which had the most amount of violations by far, looked to be in about Greenwich Village, Tribeca area, which is wealthier, definitely one of the more wealthy parts of Manhattan, but also less gridded out. So there may be one of several issues here. Firstly, that people are wealthy, so they don't really care as much about violations. But more likely, the fact that there are probably a lot of deliveries in the area because there are a lot of restaurants and that sort of thing down there. But also the issues regarding street cleaning, which is where we saw a lot of the violations occur. The streets may not be as clear because they're not as nicely laid out as they are on the Upper West Side or the Upper East Side. We also investigated as to what the car types actually were and how that may have played into the violations. And we saw that basically normal passenger type vehicles were really receiving by far the most amount of violations. This could also be because, for example, here in Boston, commercial plates can park in a lot more places, a lot more permitted parking during business hours and that sort of thing, which we're assuming New York has similar types of rules. But and also we see from other portions of data that a lot of this actually has to do with street cleaning and that sort of thing. So it would make sense as to why passenger vehicles, why sedans and Suburbans were receiving the most amount of violations by far. And then we sought out who the frequent flyers were, who the people were that received the most amount of violations for the year. And we saw that there were 2 people who received 26 violations apiece for the year. Although conversely, we found that the majority of the violations were actually spread in the 1 or 2 violations per plate number realm, which would indicate to us that these violations do in fact work, and that most people, after they receive 1 or 2 parking violations, tend to try to play on the straight and narrow.
Hi everyone, I'm Sijia. For the next analysis part, we researched the most frequent violation killed by the New York violation data. We can see in the chart and the table from the most violation are type of 21, 85, 46, 14, and 16. The violation kill 21 is much higher than others, and more than 4,000 times. Kill 85 and 46 rank behind, both at about 2,000 times. In order to figure out the details about it, we made a specific table for the violation types based on the above table. In the top 5 violation type table, 21 violation code stands for the street cleaning, which means cars are parked in the incorrect place where parking is not allowed by sign, street marking, or traffic control device. This type of violation is not as expensive as other types, but it is most frequent one. The 85 codes standing for parking a commercial vehicle over 3 hours is coming next, and the standing or parking on the roadway side of a vehicle stopped and the general no standing frequently occurred in New York, which are both at $115. And one more, drivers are frequent parking at the truck loading or unloading place, which will be fined $95. Next, we explore the most frequent parking violation occur time and worked out the top 10 violation time chart. According to the table above, violations occurred in afternoon much more than in morning. Additionally, the most violations happen at 1 to 2 p.m., 6 to 8 p.m., and 8 to 8:30 a.m. Citizens in New York City are easily get violation parking in lunch and dinner time and the early peak. We can illustrate that violation is more likely occurred when people are rushed to work or something. In this part, we identify the most vehicle registration states. The chart came out from ours showed that New York has much more restricted vehicles than other states and topped at the first place, with about 30,500 registered vehicles. And New Jersey and Pennsylvania come next. Therefore, we think make analysis of violation parking with the data of New York makes sense for the most amount of registered vehicles.
As far as my teammates have concerned, we roughly divided the parking violation problem into 3 parts: time, location, and car type. We also answered questions like which precinct is most violated place and where exactly it is, which time is the most violated one. So here are some conclusions we can draw. The most frequent violation is street cleaning, which means no parking where parking is not allowed by sign, street marking, or traffic control device. New York City can totally earn income like $875,000 in a year because of the violation code of street cleaning. And the second one is most violation parking occurred at afternoon, especially 1 to 2 p.m., 6 to 8 p.m., and 8 to 8:30 a.m. Citizens in New York City are easily get violation parking in lunch and dinner time, as well as after early peak. According to national statistics, New York is the state that has most vehicle registration, much higher than other states. The precincts with most violations located at Manhattan, and the most violation vehicle body types are city, suburban, and delivery vehicle. And here are our references. Thank you.